I'm Margaret Chun, 73 years old, and I've learned that life has a peculiar sense of humor. For 42 years, I stood beside Robert. We built a life together in our modest home on Maple Street. I watched silver threads weave through his dark hair. I learned every wrinkle on his face, every habit, every preference. I thought I knew everything about the man I married, but as it turns out, I didn't know him at all. Robert worked in commercial real estate. He was good at what he did. Very good. Over the decades, he built quite a portfolio. Property scattered across 3 states. Investment accounts I barely knew existed. He handled the finances. I trusted him completely. That was my first mistake. My second mistake was believing that my daughter-in-law, Vanessa, actually cared about me. Vanessa married my son, Thomas, 20 years ago. She was beautiful then. Still is, I suppose. Blonde hair, always perfectly styled. Designer clothes. A smile that could light up a room, though it never quite reached her eyes when she looked at me. From the beginning, she made her feelings clear. I wasn't sophisticated enough. My furniture was outdated. My cooking was too traditional. I embarrassed her at dinner parties with my old-fashioned ways. But I tried. For Thomas's sake, I tried to build a bridge. Then Robert got sick. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. The doctors gave him 6 months. He lasted 8. During those final months, something shifted. Vanessa started visiting more often. She'd bring soup, sit by Robert's bedside, hold his hand. She'd stroke his arm and call him Dad in that sweet voice. I thought, maybe I'd been wrong about her. Maybe crisis brings out the best in people. Maybe she was finally showing her true colors. I was right about that last part. Just not the way I expected. The day of the will reading, Vanessa wore black Chanel. Appropriate for morning, yet somehow expectant. She sat beside me in the lawyer's office, patting my hand occasionally. Thomas sat on my other side, looking tired and sad. Our family attorney, Harold Mitchell, had known Robert for 30 years. He cleared his throat and began reading. The house would go to Thomas. That made sense. Some savings accounts would be split between our 2 grandchildren for college. Also reasonable. Then Harold paused. He looked at me over his reading glasses with an expression I couldn't quite place. To my devoted wife Margaret, who has been my companion for over 4 decades. Here it comes, I thought, the security I'd need for my remaining years. I leave my gratitude and my blessing, the remainder of my estate, valued at approximately $77 million. I leave to my daughter-in-law, Vanessa Chun, who has shown me extraordinary kindness and understanding in my final months. The room went silent. I felt the blood drain from my face. 77 million? I didn't even know Robert had accumulated that much. And he left it too. Vanessa? I turned to look at her. She was smiling. Not the polite smile she usually wore. A real smile. Satisfied. Almost triumphant. I know this comes as a surprise, Harold continued, looking uncomfortable. But Robert was quite clear about his wishes. He believed Margaret would be cared for by family, and he wanted to recognize Vanessa's special attention during his illness. Special attention, the words echoed in my head as I sat there, numb. 42 years. 42 years of cooking his meals, washing his clothes, raising his children, being his partner, and I got gratitude and blessings. Vanessa reached over and squeezed my hand. I'm so sorry, Margaret, she said, her voice dripping with full sympathy. I had no idea. But don't worry, we'll take care of you. That's when I saw it. Just for a moment. The real Vanessa, the gleam in her eyes, the slight upturn of her lips. She'd known. Of course, she'd known. Those visits during Robert's final months, the hand-holding, the sweetness. She'd been working on him, manipulating him, probably whispering about how I'd be fine, how Thomas would take care of me, how she deserved recognition for her devotion. And Robert, weak and dying, and probably not thinking clearly, had fallen for it. Harold continued reading, but I barely heard. Something about trust funds and distributions. Legal language that meant nothing to me in that moment. When we left the office, Vanessa was already on her phone. Darling, she said to someone, probably her sister. You won't believe. Yes. 77 million. Can you imagine? She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. Thomas walked me to my car. MOM, he said quietly. I don't know what to say. This isn't right. No, I agreed. It's not. But what could we do? The will was legal. Robert had been of sound mind, according to the doctors. There was no recourse that night. I sat in the house that would soon belong to Thomas, surrounded by 42 years of memories, and I cried. Not just for the money, though God knows that hurt, but for the betrayal, for the realization that my husband had valued his daughter-in-law's few months of fake kindness over my lifetime of real devotion, and for the fact that Vanessa had won. Or so I thought. 2 weeks later, Harold called. "Margaret," he said, "could you come to my office?" "Alone?" When I arrived, he was smiling, actually smiling. "I want you to wait until after the initial reading," he said, settling into his chair. "Robert left me very specific instructions." He opened a drawer and pulled out a sealed envelope. My name was written on it in Robert's handwriting. "He gave this to me 6 months before he died," Harold explained. "Before Vanessa started her visits, he was very clear that I should only give it to you in private, 2 weeks after the will reading." My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a letter and another document. "My dearest Margaret, if you're reading this, then Vanessa showed her true colors, exactly as I predicted. I've known for years what she really thinks of you, of us. I've seen her cruelty, her manipulation, her greed. When I got sick, I knew she'd make her move. So I set a trap. I changed my will, leaving everything to her. I let her think she'd won, and I watched her reveal exactly who she really is. But here's what Vanessa doesn't know. That 77 million, it doesn't exist. Not anymore. 6 months ago, I transferred everything, every property, every investment, every account into an irrevocable trust. With you as the sole beneficiary, the estate she inherited is worthless. Empty accounts, properties already sold. By the time she figures it out, there will be nothing to contest. I'm sorry I had to let you suffer through that will reading. But I needed her to feel like she'd won. I needed Thomas to see who he's really married to. And I needed it all to be legal and uncontestable. You gave me 42 wonderful years. This is my final gift to you. Security, comfort, and the satisfaction of knowing that Vanessa got exactly what she deserved. All my love, forever." Robert, he sat there, stunned, as Harold explained the details. The trust was airtight. Every asset had been transferred months ago, all legally documented. The will Vanessa had celebrated was technically accurate. She'd inherited Robert's estate. It just happened to be an empty estate. He was quite clever, Harold said, with obvious admiration, and he made sure there's no legal recourse for her. She can't claim fraud because the will is genuine. She can't contest the trust because it was established while Robert was indisputably of sound mind, with multiple medical evaluations to prove it. When will she find out? I asked. Well, Harold said, checking his watch, her lawyer should be calling her right about now. I didn't tell Thomas or anyone else. I simply went home and waited. 3 days later, Vanessa showed up at my door. Her perfect hair was disheveled. Her makeup was smudged. She looked like she'd been crying for hours. "You knew," she hissed. "You knew." "Knew what?" I asked calmly. "Don't play innocent. The money, it's gone. All of it. The accounts are empty. The properties are sold. There's nothing." "Oh my," I said. "How unfortunate." She stared at me, and I watched the realization dawn. It was you. He gave it all to you. I didn't confirm or deny. I simply smiled, the way she'd smiled at me in that lawyer's office. "You pay for this," she threatened. "I'll sue." "You'll do nothing," I said quietly, "because there's nothing to be done." Robert made his choice. He chose to protect the woman who loved him faithfully for 42 years over the woman who pretended to care for 8 months. Thomas will hear about this. "Thomas already knows," I said, "because I told him that morning. He knows everything about the trust, about your manipulation, about who you really are." The color drained from her face. I won't lie, watching her realize that she'd lost everything she'd schemed for. It felt good, better than it probably should have. She left without another word. That was 6 months ago. Thomas and Vanessa are divorcing. He moved back in with me temporarily, until the house transfers to his name. We sit together in the evenings sometimes, talking about his father, about memory and love and betrayal. "I should have seen it sooner," he says. "We see what we want to see," I tell him. "Until we can't anymore. I am comfortable now. More than comfortable. Robert's trust ensures I'll never want for anything. But that's not what matters most. What matters is that Robert knew me, really knew me. He knew I'd be devastated by that will reading. He knew I'd doubt everything we'd built together. But he also knew I'd understand eventually, that I'd appreciate not just the security he provided, but the justice. He knew Vanessa would reveal herself completely if she thought she'd won. And he was right. Some people might say revenge is beneath us, that we should be bigger than that. Maybe they're right, but sometimes someone shows you who they really are.